The Tuesday evening crowd at Marcello's Italian restaurant was exactly what you'd expect. Businessmen in expensive suits laughed too loudly over their third glass of wine. A young couple sat in the corner booth, holding hands across the table like it was their first date or maybe their last attempt to save something that was already broken. Near the window, a family of tourists studied their menus with confused expressions, probably wondering why a plate of pasta cost $40. Maya Chen moved between the tables like she'd done it 1,000 times before because she had 3 years of the same routine. Take the order, smile, bring the food, smile again, clear the plates, repeat. Her black work shoes squeaked against the polished floor, and her feet ached in that familiar way that told her she still had 4 more hours to go. She carried a tray loaded with steaming plates of seafood risotto to table 12, where 3 women were celebrating something. A birthday, maybe, or a promotion. Maya didn't ask anymore. Early on, she used to engage with every table, asking questions, being genuinely interested. But after a while, all the celebrations started to blur together. It was easier to just smile, serve, and move on. "Enjoy your meal," she said, placing the plates down with practiced precision. The women barely looked up, too absorbed in their conversation. Maya didn't mind. Invisible was easier most days. As she walked back toward the kitchen, she passed the grand piano sitting in the corner of the dining room. It was a beautiful instrument, a Steinway that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years of waitressing. The wood gleamed under the soft restaurant lighting, polished to perfection every morning by the cleaning crew. On weekends, the restaurant hired professional pianists to play during dinner service. Soft jazz mostly, classical pieces occasionally. Nothing too demanding or distracting. Just background ambiance for people who probably weren't really listening anyway. But tonight was Tuesday and Tuesdays were quiet. No piano music, just the clinking of silverware, the murmur of conversations, and the occasional burst of laughter from the bar area. Maya's fingers brushed the edge of the piano as she passed it. She did this sometimes without thinking, like touching a photograph of someone you used to know. The wood was cool and smooth under her fingertips, and for just a second, something tightened in her chest. A feeling she'd gotten good at pushing down. There was a time when pianos meant everything to her, when her whole world revolved around keys and scales and the pursuit of perfection. She'd spent her childhood in practice rooms, her teenage years preparing for competitions, her early 20s at one of the best music conservatories in the country. Her professors said she had something special. Not just technical skill, though she had plenty of that, but something deeper, an ability to make the music breathe, to make people feel something real when she played. That version of her life felt like it belonged to someone else now. Maya pushed through the swinging kitchen door, the heat and noise hitting her like a wall. The line cooks shouted orders at each other in a mix of English and Spanish. Steam rose from pots of boiling water. Someone had burned something earlier, and the smell still lingered under the aroma of garlic and tomato sauce. She dropped off her empty tray and grabbed 2 plates of lasagna for table 7. Her manager, Vincent, was standing near the expo line, stress radiating off him in waves. He was on his phone, his free hand rubbing his forehead in frustration. Maya caught bits of the conversation as she waited for the garnish on her plates. "What do you mean you can't make it? We have a full house tonight." "No, I understand, but..." "Fine, yes. Feel better." Vincent hung up and let out a long breath. He looked around the kitchen, seeming to notice Maya for the first time. "The pianist just canceled," he said. "Some stomach bug. We're going to have to go without music tonight." Maya nodded. "That's too bad." "Yeah, well..." Vincent shrugged, already moving on to the next problem. "It is what it is." Maya took her plates and headed back to the dining room. It shouldn't have mattered. The restaurant didn't need piano music to function. People would still eat their $40 pasta. They'd still leave tips. The night would go on. But as she served table 7 and made her rounds refilling water glasses, she noticed the difference. The restaurant felt flatter somehow, less alive. The conversations seemed louder in a bad way, competing with each other instead of floating over a musical foundation. Even the tourists by the window kept glancing at the silent piano, like they were waiting for something that wasn't going to happen. Maya understood that feeling more than anyone. During her break, she sat in the small staff room in the back, eating leftover breadsticks and scrolling through her phone without really seeing anything. Her mother had texted earlier asking how her day was going. Maya sent back a thumbs-up emoji. It was easier than explaining that every day was basically the same. Her mom was doing better now, finally. The treatments had worked and the doctors were optimistic. But the medical bills were still there, stacked up like a mountain Maya was climbing one shift at a time. That's why she'd left the conservatory 3 years ago in her final year. When your mother is sick and the insurance doesn't cover everything and someone needs to work, the choice isn't really a choice at all. Her professors had been understanding, sympathetic even. They'd said the door would always be open if she wanted to come back. But doors don't stay open forever, and life doesn't wait for perfect timing. By now, her former classmates had graduated, started their careers, won competitions she used to dream about entering. They were living the life she'd walked away from. Sometimes she went to the music store downtown on her days off, just to play the keyboards they had on display. The employees knew her by now, gave her space to practice. It wasn't the same as having access to a real concert hall or a proper piano, but it was something. It kept her fingers from forgetting what they once knew. The break ended too quickly, like it always did. Maya stood up, tossed her trash, and headed back to the dining room. The evening shift was in full swing now. More tables had filled in. The bar was getting louder, and the piano sat there in the corner, silent and waiting, like it was holding its breath for something that might never come. Maya picked up her order pad and approached a new table by the window. An older couple sat there, dressed nicely for what looked like a special occasion. The woman wore a pearl necklace that caught the light, and the man had that gentle smile of someone who'd been married long enough to be genuinely content. "Good evening," Maya said, her customer service smile automatic by now. "Welcome to Marcello's. Can I start you off with something to drink?" As they ordered their wine, Maya's mind was already moving ahead to the next table, the next order, the next smile. Just another Tuesday evening. Just another shift in a life that had become predictable and safe and nothing like what she'd once imagined. She had no idea that in less than an hour, everything was about to change. Maya was refilling the water pitcher at the service station when Vincent appeared beside her, moving faster than usual. His tie was slightly loosened, and there was a thin line of sweat on his forehead despite the air conditioning. He looked like a man who just realized he forgot something important. "Maya," he said, keeping his voice low, "can I talk to you for a second?" She set down the pitcher and followed him to the small hallway near the bathrooms, away from the dining room noise. Vincent glanced back toward the restaurant, then at her, then back again. He was nervous about something, which was unusual. Vincent was normally the calm one, the guy who handled customer complaints and kitchen disasters without breaking a sweat. "So, the piano situation," he started. "It's becoming a problem," Maya waited. She'd learned that when managers started conversations like this, it was better to let them get to the point on their own. Table 14 just arrived. "Do you know who they are?" Vincent didn't wait for her to answer. "They're restaurant critics. From the Tribune and 2 food blogs that have serious followings. They're here to review us and the place feels dead without the music. I can see them noticing it. One of them keeps looking at the piano." "That's rough," Maya said, meaning it. She knew how much Vincent cared about the restaurant's reputation. "Maybe you could play some recorded music through the speakers?" "We tried. The system isn't working properly. Antonio's been messing with it for 20 minutes and it's just making static noises." Vincent ran his hand through his hair. "Look, I know this is completely out of nowhere, but I remember you mentioning once that you studied music. Was that piano by chance?" Maya's stomach dropped. She knew exactly where this was going, and every instinct told her to shut it down immediately. "Vincent, that was a long time ago. I don't really play anymore. But you could? Technically, you know how." He looked at her with hopeful eyes, the kind that made it hard to say no. "I'm not asking for a concert or anything fancy. Just some background music. An hour, maybe less. Anything would be better than this awkward silence." "I haven't performed in front of people in 3 years," Maya said, her voice quieter than she intended. "I wouldn't even know what—" "Oh, play. Anything. Honestly, anything at all. You're classically trained, right? That's what you said?" Vincent was speaking faster now, sensing her hesitation. "These critics are going to write about the atmosphere, and right now we don't have one. Please, Maya. I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate." Her heart was pounding in a way that felt both terrifying and strangely familiar. It was the same feeling she used to get before competitions, before recitals, before any moment when she had to sit down at a piano and prove herself. She'd forgotten how much she hated that feeling, or maybe she'd just forgotten how much she secretly missed it. I'm in my work uniform, she said weakly, already knowing she was going to say yes and hating herself a little for it. You look fine, professional, perfect. Actually. Vincent was already smiling, already assuming this was happening. Just for an hour, 1 hour, and I'll owe you big time. Extra break tomorrow, whatever you need. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Somewhere in her mind, a door she'd kept carefully locked was starting to open. Just a crack. Light was coming through, and it hurt to look at. Okay, she heard herself say. 1 hour. But if I mess up, you can't get mad at me. You won't mess up, Vincent said confidently, though he had no way of knowing that. Thank you, Maya. Seriously, thank you. He rushed back toward the dining room, probably to tell the hostess or update the kitchen staff. Maya stood in the hallway for a moment, her hands shaking slightly. What had she just agreed to? She couldn't do this. She shouldn't do this. 3 years away from serious playing was an eternity. Her technique had probably deteriorated. She'd embarrass herself in front of a full restaurant, including professional critics who actually knew what good music sounded like. But her feet were already moving, carrying her back toward the dining room. She stopped at the service station and untied her apron with fingers that didn't feel quite connected to her body. One of the other servers, a college kid named Danny, gave her a confused look. You okay? He asked. I'm going to play the piano, Maya said, and hearing the words out loud made it real in a way that scared her. Danny's eyes widened. Wait, seriously? You know how to play? I used to. She folded her apron carefully, buying herself a few more seconds. We'll see if I still do. Word spread fast in restaurants. By the time Maya walked toward the piano, half the staff had found reasons to peek out from the kitchen or service areas. She could feel their eyes on her, curious and encouraging. A few diners had noticed something was happening too. The waitress was walking toward the decorative piano like she actually intended to use it. Maya pulled out the bench and sat down, her hands resting on her lap. The piano bench felt both foreign and completely natural, like returning to a childhood home after years away. Everything was familiar but somehow different. Smaller, maybe. Or she was different, and the home had stayed the same. She lifted the key cover slowly, revealing the ivory and ebony keys that seemed to glow in the restaurant lighting. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished black surface of the piano. She looked tired, older than she felt. But there was something else in her eyes, too, something she hadn't seen in a long time. Fear, excitement, hope, all mixed together in a way that made her feel incredibly alive. The dining room was getting quieter. People were noticing now, conversations dropping to whispers. Maya could feel the weight of their attention, and it pressed down on her shoulders like a physical thing. Her hands moved to the keys, hovering just above them. Her fingers remembered the position automatically. Muscle memory from thousands of hours of practice kicking in. She thought about her mother, sitting in that hospital room 3 years ago, telling Maya to go to class, to not worry, that everything would be fine. She thought about the scholarships she'd turned down, the competition she'd withdrawn from, the future she'd carefully packed away. She thought about all those trips to the music store downtown, playing on cheap keyboards while pretending it was enough. And she thought about the last time she'd played for an audience. Her final recital at the conservatory before she left. She'd played Chopin that night, and her professor had told her afterward that she'd played with her whole heart, that it was the most moving performance he'd heard from her. You have a gift, he'd said. Don't let it go to waste. But gifts didn't pay medical bills. Gifts didn't keep the lights on or food on the table. Real life required sacrifice, and she'd made hers willingly, without regret. At least, that's what she'd been telling herself for 3 years. Maya's fingers touched the keys lightly, barely making a sound. The piano was perfectly in tune. Of course it was. A restaurant like Marcello's wouldn't have anything less than a perfect instrument, even if they only used it on weekends. She took one more breath, deep and slow. The restaurant had gone almost completely silent now. Even the critics at table 14 had stopped talking, their attention focused on the waitress at the piano. This was it. No turning back. Maya's fingers pressed down, and the first notes rang out clear and pure into the silence. She'd chosen Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, one of the first pieces she'd ever truly loved. The opening was soft, almost hesitant, like a question being asked, and just like that, everything else fell away. The first few measures came out shaky. Maya could hear it, Could feel it in the way her fingers hesitated just slightly between notes. She was rusty, out of practice, and terrified. Her left hand felt stiff on the bass notes, and her right hand was trying too hard, forcing the melody instead of letting it breathe. But then something started to shift. It happened around the 8th measure, when the melody repeated but with slight variations. Her shoulders relaxed without her realizing it. Her breathing fell into rhythm with the music, and suddenly her hands weren't thinking anymore. They were just moving, following patterns carved so deep into her memory that 3 years away couldn't erase them. The music began to flow. Chopin's Nocturne was like returning to an old conversation with someone you'd loved. The notes were familiar, comfortable, but they meant something different now than they had when she was 22 years old and still believed the world owed her something for her talent. Back then, she'd played this piece perfectly, technically flawless, hitting every note exactly as written. But there had been something missing, some depth she couldn't access because she hadn't lived enough yet. Now, though, now she understood what Chopin had been trying to say. The melancholy wasn't just sadness. It was the bittersweet ache of beautiful things that don't last. It was the weight of choices made and paths not taken. It was 3 years of carrying water pitchers and forcing smiles and pretending that giving up your dreams was fine. Actually, because sometimes love means sacrifice. Her fingers moved across the keys with growing confidence, and the melody soared through the restaurant like it had been waiting for permission to exist. The left hand provided gentle support, steady and reliable, while the right hand told the real story in long, singing phrases that seemed to hang in the air, even after the notes ended. Maya's eyes were closed now. She didn't remember closing them, but it was easier this way. Easier to be somewhere else. Some place where she wasn't a waitress who smelled like garlic bread and had sore feet. Some place where she was just music, nothing else. The restaurant had disappeared, or maybe she had disappeared into the restaurant, become part of its walls and floors and the spaces between tables. She was dimly aware that no one was talking anymore, that the constant background noise of clinking silverware and quiet conversations had stopped, but it felt distant and unimportant. What mattered was the next phrase, the next moment of the piece. The nocturne was building toward its emotional center, the section where the melody climbed higher and the harmonies got richer, more complex. This was the part that always made her cry when she heard other people play it, back when she still let herself listen to classical music. She'd stopped listening years ago. It hurt too much. But now she was inside the music again, and yes, it hurt. It hurt in the way that pressing on a bruise hurts, painful but also proof that you're still alive, still capable of feeling something real. Tears were sliding down her cheeks, and she didn't bother wiping them away. Her hands never stopped moving. The melody reached its peak and began its descent, becoming quieter, more introspective, like someone telling you a secret they've kept for too long. Maya's whole body swayed with the music, following its natural rhythm. She'd forgotten this part of performing, how it was physical as much as mental, how the music lived in your shoulders and your back and the way you breathed. She transitioned into the final section, where Chopin brought back the opening theme but transformed, wiser somehow. The notes were the same, but they meant something different after everything that had come before. Isn't that how life worked too? You circled back to where you started, but you weren't the same person anymore. As the last notes faded away, Maya held her hands on the keys for a moment longer, not wanting to let go. The silence that followed felt like sacred space, like the moment after prayer when you're not sure if you're supposed to open your eyes yet. She opened hers slowly. The restaurant was completely still. Every person, from the businessmen at the bar to the tourist by the window to the anniversary couple in the corner booth, was staring at her. Their expressions ranged from shock to disbelief to something that looked almost like grief, as if the music had cracked something open inside them too. Then one person started clapping. One of the women from the celebration table, the one who hadn't looked up when Maya served their risotto earlier. Others joined quickly, and within seconds the entire restaurant had erupted into applause. Not polite golf clapping either. Real applause, the kind that echoed off the walls and came with whistles and even a few people standing up. Maya sat frozen at the piano bench, overwhelmed. Her face was wet with tears she hadn't fully registered crying. Her hands were shaking now in a different way, adrenaline flooding her system as reality came crashing back in. The kitchen staff had crowded into the doorway. Antonio and the line cooks and even Jorge the dishwasher, all of them clapping and grinning. Danny, the college kid, looked like he'd just witnessed a miracle. Vincent was standing near the bar with his hand over his mouth, eyes wide. At table 14, the critics sat with strange expressions on their faces. One of them, a woman with short gray hair and glasses, was wiping her eyes. Another had his phone out, and Maya realized with a jolt of panic that he might have been recording. The third was simply staring at her like she was trying to solve a puzzle. The applause continued, and Maya didn't know what to do. Should she stand up? Bow? Wave? She'd forgotten the etiquette of performance, the social contract between musician and audience. So she just nodded, a small acknowledgement, and gave an awkward half-smile that probably looked as uncertain as she felt. But the crowd didn't seem to mind her awkwardness. If anything, it made the moment more powerful. This wasn't some polished professional going through the motions. This was raw, real, unexpected. This was a waitress who'd just revealed that she carried an entire universe inside her that no one had bothered to see. More, someone shouted from the back. Others joined in, calling out encouragement. Play something else. That was beautiful. Don't stop. Maya looked at Vincent, seeking permission or maybe rescue. He was nodding eagerly, gesturing for her to continue. She glanced at the clock on the wall. 20 minutes had passed, though it felt like both seconds and hours. She'd promised him an hour. Her hands moved back to the keys before her brain had fully decided. If she stopped to think about it, she'd panic. Better to just keep going, ride this wave wherever it was taking her. She started playing Debussy's Clair de Lune, another old friend from her conservatory days. Where Chopin had been bittersweet melancholy, Debussy was gentle moonlight, impressionistic and dreamlike. The notes cascaded like water, like light reflecting off a lake at night. This time she kept her eyes open. She let herself see the restaurant, the people, all of it. The businessman who'd been loud earlier sat quietly now, his wine glass forgotten. The couple by the window had moved closer together, her head on his shoulder. The family of tourists had stopped pretending to understand the menu and just listened, and Maya played. She played through the fear and the shock and the strange joy of remembering who she used to be. She played through 3 years of exhaustion and medical bills and dreams deferred. She played for her mother, who'd told her to let it go, that practical matters had to come first. She played for her younger self, who'd believed that talent and passion were enough. Most of all, she played for herself. For the girl who'd walked away and the woman who'd survived in this moment right now, where past and present collided into something she couldn't name. Yet the music filled every corner of Marcello's Italian restaurant, and for once, Maya Chen wasn't invisible at all. Maya woke up the next morning to 73 text messages and 42 missed calls. Her phone had been on silent overnight, charging on her nightstand while she slept the deep, dreamless sleep of someone who'd just emptied their soul in public. She sat up in bed, confused and slightly panicked. Had something happened? Was her mom okay? She scrolled through the messages quickly, her heart racing until she realized they weren't emergencies. They were all about last night, her old roommate from the conservatory. Maya, is this you? Her cousin in Seattle. You're famous. Check YouTube. Danny from work. Dude, you have like 2 million views. 2 million views of what? Maya opened YouTube with shaking hands and typed in Waitress piano. The first result made her stomach flip. The video thumbnail showed her at Marcello's piano, caught mid-performance with tears on her face and her eyes closed. The title read, Waitress stuns restaurant with hidden talent, you won't believe this. The view count read 2.3 million, and it had only been posted 9 hours ago. She pressed play and there she was. The video had been filmed from somewhere near the bar, probably on someone's phone. The quality wasn't perfect, but the audio was clear enough. She watched herself play the Chopin Nocturne, watched her own transformation from nervous to completely absorbed. Even seeing it from the outside, she could feel the emotion pouring out of the screen. The comments section had exploded. Thousands of people sharing their reactions, many saying they'd cried, others demanding to know who she was and why she was serving tables instead of playing concert halls. Some claimed it was fake, staged, but most seemed genuinely moved. Maya set the phone down and pressed her palms against her eyes. This couldn't be happening. She'd agreed to play for 1 hour. For the dinner crowd at Marcello's, not for millions of strangers on the internet. The thought of all those people watching her, judging her, analyzing her technique made her feel exposed in a way that was almost painful. Her phone rang. Vincent's name appeared on the screen. Maya, thank God, he said when she answered. Have you seen it? Have you looked outside? Seen what? I just woke up. I saw the YouTube video, but what do you mean outside? There's a line, Vincent said, and she could hear the mixture of excitement and stress in his voice. A line of people waiting for us to open for lunch. They want to hear you play. We've had 3 news stations call already asking for interviews. The reservation book is completely full for the next 2 weeks. Maya, this is incredible. This is terrifying, Maya corrected, getting out of bed and walking to her apartment window. She lived 3 blocks from the restaurant, close enough that she usually walked to work. Vincent, I can't do interviews. I'm not prepared for this. I just played some piano. You didn't just play some piano. Whatever you did last night, it connected with people. He paused. Look, I know this is overwhelming. Take the day off. Don't come in for your shift. But Maya, think about what this could mean. For you, I mean, not just for the restaurant. After they hung up, Maya sat on her couch and watched the video again. Then she read through the comments, really read them this time. Mixed in with the usual internet noise were messages that struck something deep inside her. I gave up painting 10 years ago to take a corporate job. This made me want to pick up a brush again. My daughter plays piano. I've been telling her it's not a practical career. After watching this, I'm going to apologize to her. I'm sitting in my car crying in a parking lot. I didn't even know I needed to hear this today. These weren't just comments about her playing. They were people seeing their own abandoned dreams reflected back at them. She'd somehow become a symbol for everyone who'd ever chosen practicality over passion, who'd ever wondered what if. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of her. Hello? Is this Maya Chen? The voice was older, formal, with a slight German accent that sent a jolt of recognition through her. Yes, this is Maya. This is Professor Steinberg, from the conservatory. I hope you remember me. Maya's breath caught. Professor Steinberg had been her primary instructor during her time at school, a legendary pianist who'd performed in major concert halls around the world before dedicating himself to teaching. He'd been devastated when she'd withdrawn, had tried to find scholarship money to help her stay, but there hadn't been enough to cover everything she'd needed. Of course I remember you, Professor. I'm surprised you remember me. Remember you? He laughed, but it wasn't unkind. Maya, you were one of the most naturally talented students I've taught in 40 years. When you left, I told my wife I'd lost someone special, and now I see you on YouTube playing in a restaurant, and I must ask, why are you serving food when you should be performing? Maya explained about her mother, the medical bills, the impossible choice she'd had to make. Professor Steinberg listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he was quiet for a moment. I understand, he said finally. Family comes first, always, but Maya, talent like yours is also a responsibility. Not to me, not to music, but to yourself. That video shows me you haven't lost your gift. If anything, you've gained something. Depth, truth. You're playing with your whole heart now. I don't know what to do with all this attention, Maya admitted. I just wanted to help out my manager. I didn't ask for any of this. Life rarely asks permission before changing direction, Professor Steinberg said. But listen to me carefully. I have connections. People I've taught who've gone on to successful careers. I'm going to make some calls today. I cannot promise anything, but there may be opportunities if you're interested. Small performances at first. Nothing overwhelming. Would you consider it? Maya looked around her small apartment. The pile of medical bills on her desk that was finally, after 3 years, getting smaller. The keyboard in the corner that she'd bought secondhand, that wasn't even close to a real piano but was all she could afford. The work uniform hanging on her closet door. My mom, she started. The bills aren't completely paid off yet. I can't just quit my job. I'm not asking you to quit anything. I'm asking if you'd be willing to explore what might be possible. One step at a time. His voice was gentle but firm. You gave up your dreams once for love. That was noble. But perhaps now it's time to see if you can have both. After the call ended, Maya sat in silence for a long time. Her phone kept buzzing with new messages, new notifications, new opportunities, and complications flooding in. The video had hit 3 million views. Someone had created a hashtag. People were sharing their own stories of abandoned dreams and second chances. She opened her text messages and found her mother's name. There were 5 messages from her, all sent within the last hour. Baby, I just saw the video. Why didn't you tell me you were playing again? You're crying in it.
Are you okay?
Call me when you can. I'm so proud of you. But also, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Maya dialed her mother's number with trembling fingers. She answered on the first ring. Mom, Maya said, and then couldn't say anything else because she was crying again, just like she'd cried at the piano. I know, baby, I know. Her mother's voice was thick with emotion, too. I've been watching that video over and over. You've been carrying so much, and I never knew. I thought you were okay with everything. I was okay with it, Maya said honestly.
I am okay with it.
I'd make the same choice again. But Mom, I didn't realize how much I missed it until last night. Then maybe it's time to find a way back, her mother said. Not instead of taking care of things, but along with it. I'm in remission now. The worst is behind us. You don't have to keep sacrificing for me. They talked for an hour, really talked in a way they hadn't since before the diagnosis, about fear and guilt and love and the weight of choices, about how sometimes the bravest thing is letting people help you, about how dreams don't disappear just because you pack them away. When Maya finally hung up, the sun was higher in the sky and her apartment felt different, somehow. Lighter, like a window had been opened after years of stale air. She picked up her phone one more time and scrolled through the opportunities that had already started appearing. A small cafe wanted to know if she'd play Friday nights. A wedding planner asked about availability. And there, buried in the chaos, was an email from a local arts foundation about emergency grants for artists facing financial hardship. Maya Chen had gone to bed last night as a waitress who used to play piano. She'd woken up as something else, something in between, something still being defined, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt like maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't over yet. 3 months after that Tuesday night, Maya stood backstage at the Riverside Concert Hall, wearing a black dress that her mother had helped her pick out. It wasn't anything fancy, just simple and elegant, the kind of thing that wouldn't distract from the music. Through the curtain, she could hear the murmur of the audience finding their seats, programs rustling, the anticipation building. Her hands were steady. That surprised her. The first few weeks after the video went viral had been chaos. Interview requests, social media messages, opportunities flooding in faster than she could process them. Some were genuine, others felt exploitative. People wanting to cash in on the inspiring Waitress story. Maya had learned quickly to tell the difference. The Arts Foundation grant had come through first. Not enough to change her life overnight, but enough to cover the remaining medical bills and give her breathing room. Then Professor Steinberg had connected her with a talent agent who specialized in classical musicians. Someone who understood that Maya wasn't looking for celebrity, just a chance to play. The small gigs had started simply. Friday nights at that cafe where she played for tips and free coffee, a weekend afternoon concert at the public library, a collaboration with the community orchestra that paid $300 and felt like winning the lottery. Each performance had been terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, like learning to walk again after years in a wheelchair. Marcello's had become something different too. Vincent had hired another server to cover some of her shifts, and now Maya played piano there every Friday and Saturday night. The restaurant had become known for it, a destination where you could hear a genuinely talented pianist while eating overpriced pasta. They'd even raised her wages and the tips had gotten substantially better once people knew her story. But she'd insisted on keeping some waitressing shifts, not because she needed to financially anymore, but because it kept her grounded. It reminded her where she'd come from, what she'd survived. Plus, she genuinely liked some of her co-workers. Danny was applying to music programs now, inspired by her story. Antonio the cook had started taking guitar lessons. People contained more dreams than you'd think if you bothered to look. The video itself had eventually faded from viral status, the way internet moments always do. It still had views, still got occasional comments, but the frenzy had calmed. Maya was grateful for that. She'd never wanted fame. She just wanted to play music, and somehow the universe had conspired to let her do exactly that. Tonight was different, though. Tonight was her official debut recital, the kind she should have had 3 years ago when she was supposed to graduate from the conservatory. Professor Steinberg had arranged it, calling in favors and convincing the concert hall to take a chance on an unknown pianist with an unusual story. The tickets had sold out in 2 days. 5 minutes. Ms. Chen, the stage manager said, appearing beside her with a headset and clipboard. Maya nodded, taking a deep breath. Her mother was in the third row. Maya had insisted on that, wanted her close enough to see but not so close that she'd be nervous about every small mistake. Her mom had cried when Maya gave her the ticket, had apologized again for the 1,000th time, and Maya had hugged her and told her the same thing she always did. There was nothing to apologize for. Love meant sacrifice sometimes, and she'd never regretted choosing her mother's life over a concert career. But this right now, this felt like proof that maybe you didn't always have to choose. Maybe sometimes life circled back and gave you another chance, different than you'd imagined but no less real. Professor Steinberg was here too, along with some of her former classmates from the conservatory. Vincent had closed Marcello's early and brought half the staff. Danny had brought his parents. The critics from that Tuesday night had all returned, curious to see what the waitress turned pianist would do with a proper concert hall and a 9-foot Steinway grand. Tamaya walked to the stage entrance and peeked through the curtain. The hall was beautiful, all warm wood and perfect acoustics and seats filled with people who'd come specifically to hear her play. Some were classical music lovers, others were people who'd seen the video and wanted to be part of the story. A few were probably just curious, it didn't matter why they'd come. They were here and she was going to play for them. The stage manager gave her a nod and Maya walked onto the stage. The applause started immediately, warm and welcoming. She bowed slightly awkwardly, still not quite used to this part. Then she sat at the piano bench and adjusted it to the right height. The hall settled into silence. This was the moment she used to dread before, the expectation, the pressure to be perfect. But she'd learned something over the past 3 years of carrying water, pictures and memorizing dinner specials and watching her mother fight for her life. Perfection didn't matter nearly as much as truth. Maya placed her hands on the keys and began to play. She'd chosen her program carefully, pieces that meant something to her personally. The Chopin Nocturne from that first night at Marcello's, because it felt right to honor where this had all started. A Beethoven sonata that she'd been working on when she left school, unfinished business finally completed. Some Debussy, because she'd always loved the way his music felt like painting with sound. But she'd also added something new, something she'd composed herself over the past month. It wasn't fancy or complex, nothing that would impress the serious classical musicians in the audience. It was just honest. A simple melody that captured what it felt like to lose something, to survive without it and to find it again transformed. As she played, Maya realized she wasn't nervous anymore. She wasn't thinking about the critics or the video or whether her technique was pristine enough. She was just existing inside the music, letting it pour out of her the way water flows downhill, following its natural path. The piece she'd written was about her mother, though she hadn't told anyone that. It started dark and uncertain, with low minor chords that felt like hospital waiting rooms and impossible choices. Then it shifted gradually, finding small moments of light, brief major key resolutions that felt like good test results and reasons to hope. The final section was bittersweet, acknowledging that nothing would ever be quite the same as before. But that different didn't mean less than. When she played the final chord and let it fade into silence, Maya kept her hands on the keys for a moment, feeling the vibrations die away. Then she lifted them and placed them in her lap. The applause came like a wave washing over her. People stood up row after row until the entire hall was on its feet. Maya stood and bowed, and this time it felt more natural. She could see her mother in the third row, crying openly, hands pressed to her heart. Professor Steinberg was standing too, nodding with satisfaction like he'd known all along this was how it would go. Maya bowed again, overwhelmed by the response, and walked off the stage. But the applause didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent. The stage manager appeared beside her, grinning. "They want an encore," she said. "You better get back out there." Maya walked back onto the stage, and the audience somehow got even louder. She sat at the piano again, thinking about what to play. She hadn't prepared an encore, hadn't expected to need one. Then she smiled, knowing exactly what felt right. She played the piece she used to practice at the music store downtown on her days off. The one she'd played on those cheap keyboards when she couldn't afford anything better. A simple Bach prelude, the first thing she'd ever learned that made her feel like a real pianist. It wasn't showy or impressive. It was just beautiful in its simplicity, honest and clear, and right now that felt like exactly what this moment needed. When she finished and walked off stage for the final time, Maya felt complete in a way she hadn't in years. She'd done it. She'd found her way back, not to the life she'd lost, but to something new. Something that included both who she'd been and who she'd become. In the dressing room afterward, surrounded by flowers and congratulations and people who'd believed in her, Maya checked her phone. There was a text from Vincent. "Friday night at Marcello's is still yours if you want it. We saved you a shift." "Congrats, superstar." Maya laughed and texted back, "I'll be there. Someone's got to serve the pasta." Because that was the thing she'd learned through all of this. You didn't have to choose just one version of yourself. You could be the girl who'd walked away and the woman who'd found her way back. You could be a waitress and a pianist. You could carry water pitchers and play Chopin. You could give up everything for love and still somehow find your dreams waiting for you on the other side. Life was bigger than either or. It was messy and complicated and full of second chances you never saw coming. Maya Chen had started as a waitress at a piano, but tonight she'd finished as exactly who she was meant to be. Herself, complicated and complete with all her scars and all her songs.